Welcome back to Reddit Untold, where the pettiest revenge and the most satisfying payback stories on the entire internet come to life. I have got a whole stack of them for you today, the kind where someone pushed the wrong person one too many times and paid for it in ways they never saw coming. And before we dive in, do me one quick favor. If you enjoy stories like these, tap that subscribe button right now. It is completely free, it takes 1 second, and it genuinely helps this channel grow more than you could imagine. Seriously, hit subscribe, and you will never miss a new batch. Now, get comfortable, and let us get into it. This was posted to our /true off my chest. Let's dive right into it, because there's no time to waste here. For months, I had been Secret Santa at work, but my real target was my cheating ex-boyfriend, Nate Matthews. You see, Nate and I were together for 3 years, but he kept sneaking around behind my back. It was a well-kept secret until one day, his girlfriend showed up to a work event with my name on her arm. That's when it all clicked for me. I needed revenge. And what better way than by playing Secret Santa and ruining his life? Secret Santa is supposed to be about spreading joy, right? Well, mine was more of a spread the misery operation. I started small, buying him ugly Christmas sweaters and posting them to his office anonymously with notes like, "You deserve this for keeping secrets." He didn't know it was me, so he just thought some coworker was having a little bit of fun. The real fun began when I bought him a set of Christmas-themed handcuffs. Yes, you read that right. Handcuffs. It was a hilarious idea to get stuck in the office with a fake crime going on. I left it under his desk with a note saying, "Santa's got you, my dear." His coworkers were all wondering what had happened. Nate finally caught on after he saw me trying to act cool at a company holiday party. He confronted me, but of course, I had him there. "Who knew you'd be so good at playing Secret Santa?" I said with a smirk. He was visibly flustered and clearly didn't know what hit him. I decided it would be even more satisfying if he thought it was his own idea to meet up for coffee on Christmas Eve, right after dinner. We went to the same cafe where we had our last big argument. It wasn't just a surprise. I wanted it to feel like old times, good and bad. When he got there, I pretended to act surprised. "Nate, how did you know my place?" I asked. He looked genuinely confused. "I didn't. I was just meeting someone," he said, trailing off. We both knew where this was going. He was lying through his teeth, and it only made me more confident in my plan. Then, as if by magic, the coffee arrived with a small gift box inside. "For you," I said, handing him the box. His eyes widened when he opened it to find a keychain of handcuffs. "Nice," he muttered, not realizing what was about to happen next. I leaned in closer and whispered, "You know, this could be your Christmas present if you ever try something like that again." He squirmed a little, but couldn't break free. Instead, I just smirked. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," I said before walking away, knowing he'd have to face his coworkers with these handcuffs. The aftermath was glorious. His coworkers were so shocked. They kept asking him who had done it, and he couldn't say a thing because he didn't want to make himself look bad. He got the last laugh by saying he caught me on camera giving a fake coffee delivery. That was true. Someone did record my leaving his office with a cup of coffee for him. In the end, he confessed that maybe he should have seen it coming and that our time together was over. I let out a satisfied sigh. Revenge feels good when it's deserved, doesn't it? Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /pro_revenge. Let me set the scene straight away because you need to hear this one. I'll be honest. It's a tricky situation involving betrayal and a mystery man who had no clue. It started like any other day at the office for Sarah. She was on her laptop, scrolling through Reddit, when she stumbled upon an intriguing post that left her feeling more than just intrigued. It made her feel vindicated in a twisted way. The post was from Alex, a guy who worked at the same tech firm as me, but never struck me as someone with a wandering eye. He had a girlfriend, but it seemed they were on the rocks, and he was looking for someone else to keep him company while he searched. Sarah, my wife, was not the type to be outwardly jealous or aggressive. But when she read that post, something snapped inside her. She saw an opportunity, a chance to take control of a situation she couldn't otherwise address directly. The next day, we went out for lunch. Sarah brought up the post in a casual conversation, saying how it reminded her of Alex's girlfriend back at the tech firm. At first, I dismissed it as a playful exchange, but then I caught a hint of something different in her tone, a subtle edge that made me wonder. A few days later, Sarah suggested we have a little fun. Initially, she was vague, just saying they could borrow Alex's laptop for the evening. But by the time I got home, there were plans to stage a scenario where he might run into us together. She knew his schedule down to the minute and picked an hour when Alex was most likely to be out. The plan was simple but bold. We would park at the coffee shop near our tech firm, dress in ways that suggested we weren't a couple, Sarah with oversized glasses and a scarf, me with casual yet distinctive attire, order a drink under a pseudonym, and wait for Alex. We planned to subtly interact with him so he'd think Sarah was just another coworker who was single. It turned out the plan was far more complicated than we anticipated. It started when I walked into the coffee shop, saw Alex across the room, and immediately felt that familiar twinge of jealousy. But I tried not to show it, instead striking up a casual conversation with him as if we were colleagues discussing work stuff. Meanwhile, Sarah feigned interest in his projects, their names flowing off my lips like rehearsed lines. Alex was genuinely charmed by our interaction and even invited us for coffee, offering to buy us each one. It was at that moment I saw the opportunity to make things more interesting. I suggested he come back later when we could all meet properly. Sarah agreed quickly but subtly hinted she had plans elsewhere. As Alex left with his drinks, Sarah texted him a fake location update to the coffee shop where we were actually waiting for him. The plan was foolproof. If it wasn't for one small detail, Alex noticed something off about our story and asked if anything was wrong. My heart sank. He was onto us. But I had been thinking ahead. Before Sarah could admit anything, I whipped out my phone to show him the fake coffee order receipt that would have arrived at the tech firm. "Oh wait," I said calmly. "I just saw this pop up." Alex looked intrigued, but not suspicious. He took a sip of his drink, and we chatted for another few minutes until he seemed satisfied. With our story solidified, we led him to where Sarah was waiting outside. As soon as they were alone together, she broke the ice by asking if he'd heard any exciting news at work today. With every passing second, I felt the tension grow between them. It was a delicate moment, and it paid off when Alex leaned in and kissed her. The reaction was immediate and explosive. We all went back to Sarah's office, where Alex seemed genuinely surprised but quickly composed himself. He thanked us for the coffee meetup and suggested meeting again soon. As we parted ways, I couldn't help but smile at the look on his face as he realized too late that my wife and I were anything but coworkers. The aftermath was interesting to watch. Sarah texted him later, pretending to be confused about what had just happened. She said she thought they had met before, but remembered nothing. Alex, in his charming way, played along, asking us out again. For weeks after, we received messages from him, trying to make up for the misunderstanding. It was all so satisfying. The payback not only for the momentary heartache, but also for keeping it all hidden. I know, it's a bit of an odd satisfaction, but you just can't argue with results, right? Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /surviving infidelity. Let's start with a bang, because my story isn't one of those typical ones where a wife finds out her husband is cheating on her with just anyone. No, in my case, it's a whole different level of deception. I'll keep you on the edge of your seat. It all started a few months ago when I stumbled upon a message on Slack from my husband, John, to his coworker, Sarah. At first, I thought maybe he was just being friendly, but over time, there were more messages, too many for it to be anything other than inappropriate. So, naturally, I decided to start spying on him. I began by tracking the number of times he used his personal smartphone compared to his work one. Turns out, he was using his work phone far less often. Curious, I dug deeper into his work computer and found an app that syncs with Slack. Bingo! Now I knew exactly what was going on. One day, John invited Sarah to lunch at his favorite sushi restaurant. This was in full view of the entire office, so no one could miss it. Certainly not a coworker who just happens to have a taste for sushi, or so I thought. My plan: set up my own double life to spy on him while he was busy taking care of his little secret love. I started going to the same restaurant every Friday at lunch, pretending to be just another single woman who enjoyed her food and conversation. But in reality, I had a hidden camera pointed directly at John's computer, capturing everything Sarah did during their lunch meetings. On one particular day, after weeks of gathering intel, I found myself sitting across from what looked like the most charming woman in the room. "Hi there, I'm Sarah," she said, with a flirtatious smile that sent shivers down my spine. "Nice to meet you," I replied, trying not to let on how suspicious I really was. "John mentioned you love your sushi here. We chatted for a while about work and life in general, nothing out of the ordinary. But once John arrived, it became clear this wasn't just any lunch date. Sarah immediately struck up a conversation with him as if they had known each other for years. I watched from behind my camera as he leaned closer to her, whispering something into her ear. She giggled and looked at me knowingly. "Sorry," she said, glancing over at the table where I was sitting. "But John is just too good a guy to pass up." Later that week, I sent him an email under my own name, which shocked him into telling me about his secret life. He confessed that Sarah had been using him as her wingman, getting her way with every male in the office and then ditching them at the last minute. Armed with this information, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I planned a meeting between John and Sarah where she could confront me about what was going on. In that moment, it felt like the perfect setup for some payback. Maybe they wouldn't see me coming. The plan went down flawlessly. I lured them both out of the office with the pretense of discussing a work issue. As we were walking to the cafe, I pretended to have to check my phone and asked Sarah if she had any gum. Just in case, I had hidden some in my bag. She obliged, but as soon as John and I stepped into the coffee shop, I quickly pulled out the gum, handing it over with a smirk. "Thanks," I said. "It's always a struggle to find something good at these places." John looked suspicious, so I continued. "You know, this whole situation is just messed up. How could you do that to me? And who was she telling the other day?" Sarah tried to explain, but couldn't hold it together. She started crying and admitted everything. I let her continue, knowing full well what was coming next. When the conversation finally died down, I asked John for his credit card. "You want a coffee?" I said casually, handing him his own hidden camera. "I think this one might be bugged too." He stared at me in shock as I handed over my phone and an envelope containing copies of every text and email he had sent to Sarah over the past few months. Enough evidence that made it clear he was guilty. The aftermath: John lost his job, and the company fired both him and Sarah. His career was ruined, and we're now on a divorce track that looks like a disaster. But in many ways, I got my revenge, and then some. The best part? It's all because of that hidden camera and some well-placed gum. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to r/cheaters. The title alone, "Caught in the Act," hinted at what you were about to read. It was my partner, Alex, posting a picture of himself and someone else on Instagram, with their fingers crossed and a mischievous grin. I stumbled upon it during one of our planning meetings for our engagement party. We were swamped with decorations and catering details, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Alex had been moody all day, avoiding my questions about his whereabouts. I decided to check his phone, a risky move, but desperation lent me strength. "Alex, why aren't you responding?" I called out while he fiddled with some fabric for the floral centerpieces. He glanced up, guilt written all over his face. He tried to smooth it away by saying, "Just a little text from my friend about the party." But as I pulled his phone closer, I saw the real reason. Alex had been messaging someone named Mia. I tapped on the screen, and there he was, sending photos of himself in various stages of undress with Mia. It was like a scene out of a soap opera, but this time it was real. The final message read, "Meet me at my place tonight, 8 p.m. I almost laughed, almost. That night, Alex tried to brush off the messages and assure me everything was fine. He said he had a crush on Mia from work and wanted to take her for dinner as a friend. But something didn't add up. The dinner never happened. Instead, we ended up arguing about privacy until I threatened to leave him if this ever came up again. The next day, Alex's phone rang just after my shift at the local bookstore. He rushed off to meet Mia, and I barely saw him for 2 hours. When he finally returned, he seemed agitated, like something was wrong. That night, under pretenses of work emails, I checked his phone again. But this time, there were no pictures. Just text after text, each one a punch in the gut. The final message was from Mia. "Just got back from my meeting. Had to run out before you could see." My heart sank when I saw it, and tears streamed down my face as I realized he had ditched our engagement plans for her. I decided then and there that Alex wouldn't get away with this. Revenge can be a strange thing, but it was the only thing keeping me from walking away. So, I created a plan to expose him on social media, while making sure no one would suspect who I really was. I set up an account called Alex's Expose and began following his usual habits without letting on that I knew anything. It took weeks of carefully crafted posts, fake interactions, and subtle hints to lure him into a trap. Every time he commented or messaged me, I replied with cryptic responses, leading him to believe he was dealing with someone who shared his interests but wasn't who she said she was. Finally, the day came when Alex texted me. "Can we meet in person sometime? Just talk about stuff." I agreed and set up a coffee date under the guise of checking my social media for engagement inspiration. At that cafe, I had proof, photos of him and Mia together on his Instagram feed, messages between them, and even a recent video chat they'd had. I knew exactly what to do. In front of everyone, I announced, "Alex, this has gone too far." The room fell silent as he looked down, realizing he was caught. "These are all from your profile," I said, showing him the evidence on my phone. He tried denying it, but couldn't lie through a single word. In the end, we decided to break up. He begged for forgiveness, saying he had made a huge mistake. I relented and gave him 1 week to delete his account and prove that he had changed. Otherwise, I'd make sure everyone knew about him and Mia. A month later, Alex's account was gone, but the damage was done. His business partner at work, who he had been trying so hard to impress, saw a post from my expose account claiming Alex had been cheating. Sales plummeted that week, and his reputation took a nosedive. Alex contacted me weeks later, begging for reconciliation. I gave him one last chance by telling him how much the breakup had cost him. He admitted he deserved it, but couldn't admit to breaking my heart in the process. In the end, he agreed to pay $500 per week as compensation until his reputation was restored and our friendship mended. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. Real quick, if you're enjoying this, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. It's free and it helps a ton. Okay, back to it. This was posted to our /true off my chest. From the moment I set eyes on him, I knew there was something off about him. Let's just say, if you had a little brother with a bit of a charming twinkle in his eye and a penchant for fibbing, that would be me. His name was Mark, but to keep it interesting, let's pretend he called himself Marcus. He was a software developer at Google, had a PhD from Stanford, pretty impressive credentials, right? And he was as smooth as silk. We met through mutual friends and hit it off instantly. It was like we'd known each other for years. Everything seemed perfect until I started noticing little discrepancies in his stories, like how he claimed to have traveled the world but only had a handful of passport stamps. Then there were the times when my questions would make him freeze, as if he was caught in a lie. One night, during a heated argument, I confronted him about it. "Mark, this isn't like you," I said, feeling frustrated and confused. "You used to be so open with me." He just laughed, and that's when it clicked. "Look at us, sis," he said slyly. "We're like the movie, right? The one where they swap bodies." I was taken aback by his gall, but it only fueled my curiosity. Weeks later, I decided to play along and see if there was any truth to his theory. One evening, we were both home alone. He claimed he had to work late on a project that only he could handle. As he pretended to do some coding, I snuck into his room and found something peculiar tucked away in the back of his closet. A weird-looking ID card with a face I didn't recognize but couldn't place. Curiosity won out over trust. I decided to run a quick background check on him. What I found was unbelievable. Marcus had been using an alias for years. He had another life in another part of the city, and it turned out he wasn't just from here. He was actually from another planet. That night, as we lay in bed discussing our findings, he tried to brush off my concerns, but I was having none of it. The next morning, I packed a bag and told him I needed time alone. He went about his business for days, pretending everything was fine while I laid the groundwork. Then came the plan, a plan that would teach this interplanetary scoundrel a lesson he wouldn't soon forget. I reached out to one of my old friends who had connections on the planet where Marcus came from. With their help, we arranged a rendezvous in a secluded park at midnight. Once I made sure Mark wasn't with me, I snuck out, wearing his favorite shirt and pretending to be him. When he showed up, we engaged in small talk for a bit before I let my true colors show. "Hey you," I said sarcastically. "Have you ever noticed how everyone here seems a little off? It's like they're all missing something important." He laughed nervously and tried to change the subject, but I was having none of it. I played along for just long enough until he started to get uncomfortable. That's when I dropped the bomb. "You know, Marcus, you've been a pretty good con man, but it's hard not to see through your act." He began to plead with me, saying that everything had happened because of his mission, that he was sent from another planet to learn about human behavior and relationships. The more he tried to explain, the more I knew he was lying. In a moment of clarity, I decided it was time to reveal myself. Look, I said seriously, you might have tricked everyone else, but not me. The tension in his eyes told me all I needed to know. He didn't expect this, didn't realize how easily I could expose him. I took a deep breath and said, fine, you win, but you're going home with me tonight. And we're settling the score. We made our way back to the city together, but it was clear where his loyalties now lay. He couldn't handle the truth of who he really was, or rather, what he had become. The aftermath? Well, let's just say I made sure no one would ever mistake him for a hero again. His life on Earth changed dramatically. The mission that brought him here meant nothing without his cover. As I walked away from him, leaving behind all of his possessions and his lies, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Justice served, even if it was by deception. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /pro_revenge. I'd just gotten over a breakup, and you could tell because I seemed so miserable all the time. It's been 2 months since we ended things, but the heartache didn't seem to have lifted one bit. Enter my best friend, Alex. He had it worse than me when he cheated on his wife with my ex-girlfriend, Sarah. 2 birds and a stone. One evening, I saw them at a fancy restaurant downtown. It was a small, upscale place known for its pricey menu, where they could spend hours chatting about their little affair. I thought, what if we could trap them here? I had to make Alex understand just how much he'd messed up. So, I started plotting. I messaged my ex-girlfriend Sarah first. Hey, baby, she texted back with a winking emoji. I decided that she needed to be in on this too. If there was going to be a sting operation, it had to be a team effort. Let's do it together, right? I asked. She agreed with no hesitation. The next day, Sarah called Alex and said they should meet at the same restaurant for dinner, promising something special that involved her family. He was in. So there we were, on a cold winter night, meeting under the guise of making amends. When they sat down, Sarah acted like everything was fine between them. I waited outside to make sure things went according to plan. After about an hour, she called me. It's going well, she said, her voice full of satisfaction. Just then, Alex came out to use the restroom and saw me standing there in plain sight. Nice of you to join us, he said, trying to sound casual, but his eyes darted nervously from Sarah to me. I just smirked. I couldn't miss an opportunity like this, I replied, taking a seat next to them. Alex looked at me forlornly as if the tables were finally turning on him. We spent a few minutes awkwardly staring at each other, but then the real drama began. Sarah started talking about how she wanted to end things between them and moved in closer to Alex, pressing her hand against his arm. His face reddened with embarrassment. I leaned forward too, my voice low. Alex, don't you think this whole thing was a bit of a mistake? I added with a sly grin. He avoided eye contact but nodded, admitting he knew it had been wrong and that they should just end things. Sarah's eyes widened. She hadn't counted on him giving in so quickly. That night, as we all walked out together, I could feel the tension between them, the air crackling with mutual hatred and regret. The entire evening was a huge success. I'd managed to humiliate Alex in front of his wife and Sarah, both publicly and privately. And it felt good, really good. The next day, things got even better when his wife found out about their affair through an anonymous tip-off. She was so livid that she filed for divorce on the spot. Alex got a settlement of $50,000 less than he had thought he would get, and Sarah's family decided they no longer wanted anything to do with her. It all worked out splendidly. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /cheating spouse revenge. I never thought I'd need a best friend, but when my husband, Jim, started straying, I found myself wanting just that. I met Emily through mutual friends at a co-working space downtown. She was charming and seemed genuinely concerned about my situation. She even had a fancy title, marketing director at a tech firm. How could someone in such a high position be so supportive? Easy. She wanted access to his secrets, and she saw me as her gateway. One day, Jim went on a business trip with a colleague named Sarah. I was getting desperate, and Emily offered to help. She said she had connections who could find out if Jim was really cheating or just under pressure at work. She suggested we use some of the money from his bonus, which wasn't that significant, a measly $20,000. But in my mind, it was enough to start uncovering the truth. Let's be discreet, Emily said with a reassuring smile. I have contacts who can do this for us without leaving any digital footprint. That night, I met her at a small cafe near my apartment. She handed me a USB drive and some notes. Just plug it into his computer when he's not around, she instructed. It might take a few days to get results. I felt like a spy, but I was desperate. The next morning, I arrived at their house early, ready to sneak the USB in. But as I placed it on Jim's desk, I noticed an envelope under his keyboard. Curious, I picked it up and saw Emily's name written in block letters. Inside was a check for $5,000, more than twice what we agreed. That's when reality hit me like a punch to the gut. She wasn't helping. She was profiting from Jim's infidelity. And even worse, she had been planning it all along. I couldn't just leave those notes there. They were proof of betrayal. I called Emily on her cell phone and demanded answers. What's going on? I asked, my voice shaking. Why did you put that in his computer? Why the check? She hesitated before saying, Look, I was helping you, but Jim wanted more. He said he'd give me $10,000 if we found something. I could hear her justifying it, but what she didn't realize was that I had already gathered enough evidence to expose them both. That night, I decided to go all in. I contacted a private investigator and set up an elaborate sting operation with some of Jim's financial records. Emily was in on the scheme from the beginning, so I added her details as well. The payoff came quicker than expected. The PI sent me emails with evidence of both their infidelities, including text messages and bank transfers that confirmed every dirty detail. When Emily saw the files, she panicked. Give it back, she demanded. Just take half and leave us alone. But I was done being a fool. I went straight to Jim's boss with the incriminating evidence. By this point, we had solid proof of her financial involvement as well. The news broke like a bombshell at work. Jim was fired, and Emily got suspended for unethical behavior and misuse of company assets. They both lost their jobs and faced significant financial repercussions. In the end, I felt vindicated but also hollow. My best friend turned out to be one of my worst enemies. Now that they're gone, there's a void where their friendship should have been. But at least I know who can't be trusted. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /surviving infidelity. On a cold winter evening, I was supposed to be dancing at my own masquerade ball, supposed to. That's because just weeks before it, everything in my world had changed. My fiancé, the man who claimed he loved me more than anything, was secretly married. Let's rewind. Alex and I were best friends since college. We worked in the same financial firm. I was his team lead, a position I'd earned through hard work. We had big plans, like buying our dream house, starting a family. All of that flew out the window when he said something strange over dinner one night. I'm engaged, he announced, eyes downcast. I couldn't believe it. We were about to get married in a week's time. I couldn't help but think, how could someone lie like this? The next few days were a blur of questions and accusations. His responses kept leading back to the same excuse. It was an accident. I'm sorry. But then, things went from bad to worse when his company released a press statement confirming his engagement. They even announced their wedding venue. At that moment, I felt like my life had been a lie. Alex had hidden so much about himself. As the night of the masquerade ball approached, I couldn't believe he wanted me there, supposedly celebrating our engagement. The ball was glamorous, decorated in white and silver, with dancing couples and soft lights. But every time I looked at him, all I saw were his lies. I walked around in a mask, pretending to be happy, while the truth gnawed away at me. Just as I was about to cut into my dinner, Alex slipped his hand into mine. It's not forever, he whispered. I promise. Those words stuck with me through the night. The next morning, after everyone had gone home and the ballroom cleared out, I made a decision. Tonight, this masquerade would be my last. I gathered all my courage and walked to Alex's office early in the morning. He wasn't there, but his assistant was. Excuse me, I said, trying not to sound too desperate. Alex isn't here yet. The assistant smiled warmly. No, he's been in a meeting. I nodded and quickly grabbed a piece of paper. That afternoon, I met with a trusted colleague, Sam, who worked for the company's legal department. I need your help, I said, handing him a list of names and their contact information. These are all employees from Alex's company and mine. Sam looked at me sympathetically. What can you tell me about this? You're sure he lied to everyone? I'm positive, I said firmly. We're going to send out some messages. The next day, with the help of Sam's connections, we crafted emails that were polite but pointed, hinting at discrepancies in their engagement timeline and financial dealings. We distributed them to select employees, emphasizing privacy and discretion. One by one, responses began coming in. Employees reported strange conversations with Alex about his fiance's work schedule or asked if they could transfer a favor. It became clear Alex was trying to get these people on board before we went public. Finally, the day of the big reveal arrived. I called Sam and a few others into my office, where I showed them the emails and our findings. We rehearsed what we would say when Alex tried to deny everything. As for Alex, he looked genuinely surprised when we confronted him in front of his colleagues. "You guys can't do this," he stammered, eyes wide with fear. "This is crazy." I stood my ground. "We've uncovered some inconsistencies you can't explain. We're releasing these findings publicly tonight." With that, I went on social media and posted everything. The post was a mix of facts, the emails we had received, and a list of demands. For a moment, there was silence. Then came the flood of comments. Colleagues who were shocked, others who had their suspicions but never spoke up, and even some who felt vindicated by our actions. One by one, people reached out to me privately, telling me how they too knew something wasn't right about Alex's situation. In the end, it all came down to this moment. The masquerade ball wasn't just an event. It was a metaphor for everything that was wrong in my life. By exposing his betrayal, I reclaimed my voice and freedom. The aftermath? My life has changed since then. Alex left the firm, and despite some tough moments, I found strength and support from amazing people around me. The story went viral, but more importantly, it helped me learn that sometimes taking a stand, even against someone you care about, is necessary for your own peace of mind. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. And honestly, most of you watching right now aren't subscribed yet. If these stories are hitting, change that in one tap. Now, this next one is even better. This was posted to our /infidelity. Alright guys, I had no idea what was coming. It started off like any other awkward attempt at a reconciliation. My cheating ex-husband and I were supposed to make things public by giving a live phone call on my local morning show. People thought it would be cathartic and help us mend our relationship, but it turned out to be the biggest mistake we could have made. The setup was simple. We both agreed to air everything, so there'd be no secrets left between us. My ex, Jake, always seemed like a nice guy. He had a great job at a software company, and I thought he adored me. But then I found out about his secret life with someone else. His mistress, Emma, was his whole world apparently. We were supposed to sit in the studio, just the two of us, talking about our feelings in front of everyone. The host, Linda, was all smiles and tried to keep things light. But we both had a lot on our minds. Lies, deceit, and the fact that I still loved him, even though he had left me for another woman. Anyway, let's get to the juicy part. Right when we were about to go on air, he leaned in close to my ear. "Hey," he said softly. "I know this is going to be hard, but can you tell her that I'm still working things out with Emma?" He whispered it like a secret, as if we could just let it go and pretend everything was okay. I was stunned, still am actually. I couldn't believe the nerve. Here I was facing my whole town in this public setting, sharing my soul, while he's whispering about his mistress. My ex, Jake, had already chosen her over me. He wasn't just cheating, he was lying to everyone, even me. "Jake," I said firmly, "there will be no more secrets." His eyes widened, and I saw a flicker of panic. But that didn't stop him. "Just this once," he pleaded, "please." I gritted my teeth. "No," he tried again, louder this time. "Emma is amazing, you know? She's so much better for me." That was the final straw. I stood up, ready to walk away from the whole sorry affair. "Fine," I said coldly. "You can do whatever you want with Emma. I don't care." The host glanced between us like we were both crazy, but it didn't matter. My job was done. As we walked off the stage, Jake gave me one last look. It was a mix of guilt and relief, like he knew his plan had worked. That's when I made my mind up. I wasn't going to stand for this anymore. I took out my phone and texted 2 words. "I'm done." The aftermath? Well, the next day was like night and day. Jake's mistress got wind of the public apology fiasco on TV and blew it out of proportion. She stormed into work, demanding a promotion and threatening to quit if she didn't get one. Emma, who used to be a secretary, now got a fancy title, thanks to my ex. On the flip side, I had my dignity back. I went public with everything. My lawyer filed for divorce, and it was official that Jake was cheating. He lost his job because of this whole mess. He couldn't hide the fact that he'd been giving attention to Emma when he was on work time. Emma got her comeuppance too. She was forced into counseling, but not before she left a series of messages on my voicemail, promising to get revenge. Some days, I wonder if it worked. Now, Jake's girlfriend has moved on. His new lady isn't nearly as impressive or entitled as Emma. Maybe that's all I needed, some good karma. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /pro-revenge. I'll admit, when my boyfriend started making excuses to stay home at 10 a.m. on a Friday, it seemed like one of those classic, I'm feeling under the weather things. But something just didn't sit right with me, so I decided to investigate. Now, my boyfriend is a pretty big name in tech. Let's call him Mark. He runs his own startup and has a knack for making money. But the funny thing is, he's also known for being a bit of a player when it comes to finding entertainment outside of work. I'll let you know, I'm not just his girlfriend. I'm also his business partner. So yeah, I knew he had a little leeway with how he spent his time, but this was a bit much. One day, he got really sick. So sick that when I called him to check on him, and he hung up the phone before saying anything. I thought it might be more than just a cold. Turns out, he wasn't sick at all. He had some trysts with the maid. Let me repeat. Mark was in bed pretending to be ill while having trysts with someone he hired to clean his apartment. I mean, come on, right? But here's the thing. While I was pissed about how he'd used and deceived me, something else gnawed at my brain. That maid was making minimum wage. And let's just say, Mark wasn't exactly a cheapskate when it came to his staff. So, in retaliation, I decided to make him live like the underprivileged soul he had treated her like. Here's what happened. I called all of Mark's friends, his so-called BFFs, and asked them if they would be willing to stay overnight at my apartment and pretend to be sick, too. I told them we were going to throw a surprise dinner party and hoped that by the end of it, everyone would start noticing how poorly treated his maid was. When all went well, I arranged for a few friends to come over on Saturday night. They had no idea what was about to go down. They just thought they'd be staying at my place because Mark told them he wasn't feeling well and couldn't make it out of the house. I made sure to send text messages throughout the evening suggesting that I was sick, too. So by the time they got there around 9 p.m., I was already in bed. The room smelled like illness, and a few tissues were scattered on the floor. Everything was perfect. The first guy over was a mutual friend of Mark's called Steve. He thought he was just staying with his BFF for the night. But when he came into my bedroom, where I had set up a small table with water glasses and a tiny plate of food, that's when the game started. I had written out instructions for him to read aloud. Steve, if you hear my voice, that's a sign that I'm not actually sick. In reality, I was playing a prank on Mark. He tricked me into staying in bed all day with the excuse he got sick. You see, he was using me and then had a tryst with his maid while pretending to be ill. I'm taking revenge by having you stay here as if you're sick too. Like him, a victim of his own deceit. Steve read that aloud. But it didn't really resonate with him until the next night when Mark and his friends were there in force. The next night was a bit different. Mark's entire team was there, including some of our mutual friends. We arranged for everyone to come over at 9 p.m., and I made sure to act like we were all sick, playing into their heads that this was just a weekend family dinner gone wrong, because everyone was feeling under the weather. The atmosphere quickly turned awkward when Mark and his team arrived. They could see right through our little scam, but pretended to buy it. The maid who was supposed to be cleaning came in with a tray of hot water and lemon, a common remedy for the flu. And when she saw all of us lying there, pretending to breathe shallowly, she must have felt awful. Mark's team started asking each other if they were sick, too, and I could see the unease on their faces. The maid tried to help clean up, but we had planned it so that every time someone tried to get out of bed, another friend would whisper that no one was feeling well enough to move. We kept everyone confined in the bedroom for hours. As the night wore on, Mark and his friends began to see through our ruse. But by then, their curiosity turned into outrage over how they were treated just like we had been. The maid started to cry, and that's when I knew it was working. The plan unfolded perfectly until one of Mark's friends mentioned that the maid was making minimum wage, like $12 an hour, and hadn't had a raise in years. That was the final straw. His team started discussing ways to get him fired or at least make his life miserable, much like he had made ours. In the end, the revenge was sweet. Mark's team left feeling like they were on the receiving end of a prank gone wrong, and I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that we all got our moments. And as for the maid, she was finally getting some respect. Her pay was bumped up to $25 an hour, at least until they fired him. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /true off my chest. It started one Valentine's Day morning when I decided my girlfriend of 3 years was ready to take things to the next level, or so I thought. After our usual cuddle and breakfast in bed, I casually dropped a ring box into her hand. "Sweetheart," I said with a smile, "I've been thinking. I want you to marry me." Silence. She looked at me, then down to the ring. A moment passed, and she pulled out a laptop. "Let's see what this is on Google Maps," she said with a chuckle, opening up an app. She typed in my location, zoomed in, and her face fell. I saw a glint of something in her eyes that made me uneasy. "Who are you talking to on the call?" I asked warily. Her tone changed from playful to guarded. "Oh, just some old friends catching up." I knew she was lying, but I decided to keep my cool. "Let's go out tonight and celebrate," I suggested. She nodded, but I could see her planning something behind those eyes. As we drove away, I began to suspect the truth. By the time we reached the restaurant, I was sure it wasn't just a Valentine's dinner. It was a setup to hear the news together, my proposal to coincide with his meeting. I couldn't believe what I found. The night went on as normal, full of fake smiles and forced laughter. We ordered our meals, and I felt like I was trapped in an elaborate game of poker where all the cards were face down. Finally, it hit me. She had planned this all along to announce her engagement with someone else. In the midst of a dessert platter, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said, almost as if I hadn't already figured everything out. "I really love you, but I can't be here anymore." My heart sank. She then pulled out her phone and dialed someone. The caller identified himself. "This is Mark. Listen up, my beautiful woman. I'm in town today, and it just worked out perfectly to coincide with your plans for the evening. Can we go out somewhere nice? I have something special planned," he continued without letting me interrupt. "She has been doing this too much for me to ignore. She's a different person when you're around, and I don't want to keep going on like this where she's just not happy." I knew he was talking about Mark and his fiancée, but it was my girlfriend who was breaking my heart. He continued, "Anyway, we will have some time alone now. Enjoy your evening with your fiancé." My world fell apart then and there. I tried to hold back the tears as she walked away, leaving me alone at that table, staring at a ring box I couldn't take back. The proposal hadn't been about starting something new. It had just been part of her deception. After that night, everything changed. I lost interest in my job at Acme Software and quit on the spot. My apartment felt empty without any reminders of our life together. I stopped caring about work projects and focused only on getting back some sense of control over my life. A few months later, I joined an online community that discussed payback plans for people like this. I never thought I would need it, but here I was, ready to take down the cheater. Through careful planning and discreet actions, I managed to set up a meeting with Mark under false pretenses, all while gathering evidence of his affair. Mark invited me to his high-end penthouse for what he claimed was just an informal business discussion. As we sat sipping wine, I noticed how uncomfortable he got when the conversation turned personal. He couldn't maintain eye contact or keep a straight face. It was clear that the tables were turning in my favor. The moment arrived. I pulled out documents and emails proving his affair and handed them to him. "These are the reasons why your fiancé decided it wasn't worth staying with you," I said, coldly. Mark tried to deny everything, but I had all the evidence backed up on my phone. He finally admitted he was hiding something from her. I didn't let him off easy. "You chose to betray not just one person, but two. How do you justify that?" My words cut through his facade like a knife. Mark couldn't take it anymore. Tears streamed down his face as I told him the truth. "It wasn't your money I wanted, Mark. It was everything you had taken from me and my girlfriend's trust." I made sure he understood what he'd done wrong in front of an audience that knew every detail. A few weeks later, I saw him being escorted out of court for a restraining order issued by his fiancée after she discovered the evidence against him. As for her, she admitted to everything. We both took a deep breath and moved on, each seeking healing and understanding in our own ways. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /cheating. I can't believe I'm admitting this, but here it is. My sister, Sarah, and her husband, Mark, were planning to throw a big anniversary celebration at our family's cabin. It was going to be the perfect way for us to bond after years of distance due to their work schedules. Little did we know that my mom and I found out about Mark having an affair with his assistant just a few weeks before. I had overheard some of their private conversations when they thought no one else was around, but they always tried to downplay it as just good friends. It wasn't until I caught Sarah and her husband lying in bed with different pairs of underwear that the realization sunk in. They were going through the motions of being happy for each other's anniversary, while he was cheating behind their backs. I felt a mix of anger and betrayal. The last thing we needed was to have this hanging over us during our family reunion. I sat on my balcony, sipping whiskey, contemplating what to do. After all, Sarah is part of the family, but this was crossing a line that no one should ever cross. The next morning, I got up early and went to their house. They were in the kitchen making scrambled eggs, pretending everything was normal. I pretended to chat with them casually while secretly plotting my revenge. "Sarah, Mark wanted me to make you a special anniversary breakfast," I said, walking into the kitchen. "We're good, thanks," Sarah replied, her voice tight. "What are you doing here anyway?" "I just wanted to see how it was going," I said, acting as if everything was fine. Under my breath, I whispered to myself, "No time like now." I grabbed a handful of their wedding photos and some empty envelopes. With Sarah's distracted back turned, I stuffed the pictures into the envelopes. Each one had a secret written on it, details about Mark's affair that were bound to shock and embarrass them. After breakfast was done, they sat at the table, pretending everything was perfect. But as soon as we went outside for some fresh air, I slipped the envelopes under their porch. The wind blew, but they didn't notice. That night during dinner, the family started bonding over silly childhood memories and laughter. But it ended abruptly when Mark took a nap after drinks. Sarah came back with her phone, showing him the pictures I had left. She snapped a few more candid shots of us laughing together, then sent them to him as she read aloud from one of my secret envelopes. "Mark," Sarah said softly but firm, "what's been going on here?" Mark sat up, his face pale and sweating. He looked around guiltily, realizing it was all over for him in that moment. I watched the betrayal cross her face, the pain and hurt building inside her. She needed to know what she had missed. Sarah read from another envelope. "Remember the night we went out, and you left early? You were texting your assistant, weren't you?" she said softly but accusingly. Mark flailed for an answer, but it was too late. The guest noticed how he was sweating, his eyes darting everywhere. His lie didn't last long before he broke down crying. The realization dawned on Sarah's face that everything she had been feeling all these years had a reason: her husband's lack of commitment. The aftermath was intense. Sarah's anger and sadness were palpable as they packed up to leave the cabin, unable to bear any more of their family gathering without Mark being there. Everyone left with a heavy heart, not knowing what the future held for them. I watched from afar as everyone scattered, my plan fully executed. It felt right, but also hollow. I didn't rush over to give them an update. I just let them go and deal with it. If anything was going to change their behavior, it had better come from within. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. If you're still here, you're my kind of person, so do me a favor and subscribe. Alright, the most satisfying payback is coming right up. This was posted to our /surviving infidelity. I'll keep it real, folks. I've been through some shit that's earned me my own page here on Reddit, but this one really topped it all. You know how life can throw you a curveball when you least expect it? Well, mine came with a big old dose of betrayal. My mother, the woman who raised me and gave me everything I had, well, she turned out to be as deceptive as a fox on a sugar high. For years, I thought Mom was my rock, but then this bombshell hit. A man named Alex, 20 years younger than her, had been slipping in and out of our lives without us ever knowing. Now, let's rewind a bit. My dad passed away when I was 6, so Mom was my everything. She held the family together through thick and thin. But as time went on, things seemed off. There were nights she'd stay out late or disappear for days. But I was young and didn't have the tools to really figure it all out. One day, I was going through some old letters, like 2014 vintage, and my heart nearly stopped when I saw this one from Alex. Turns out, he'd been telling me lies, making me think we were just friends while behind our backs. He and Mom had been building a second life that she never let on to us. I was mad, but I didn't know what to do. I mean, my mother? That's like breaking the trust bond in your DNA. So, I did what any rational person would do. I dug deeper and found more evidence of their affair. Emails, texts, even a few phone records. It was clear as day they were hiding something big. Then one night, after months of building up this secret, Mom and Alex were both home late. I snapped a photo of them with my phone from the kitchen without making a sound. The picture showed that they had been out together all night, and they weren't trying to hide it at all. It was like they wanted me to find out. After that, I decided enough was enough. I went straight to their door, knocked loudly, as if in some cheesy movie scene. Alex answered, looking guilty as sin. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice shaky. "Let's just say," I said, narrowing my eyes at him. "I have evidence that could ruin everything for both of you." Alex's face paled. "Evidence? What kind?" "Just trust me when I say it's damning enough to make you wish we were never born." I smirked and stepped inside. Mom was there too, looking like she just saw a ghost. "Aiden," she said weakly, trying to keep up the act that everything was okay. I handed her those same old letters, then pointed at their room. "You have two choices. Explain yourself now or live with this secret hanging over your heads for the rest of your life." There was silence in the house. I could feel my own rage boiling just below the surface. Then Alex spoke up. "We were young when we started, but it's been years, and is that an apology?" I cut him off, cutting to the core of his excuse. "That doesn't matter now, because you know what? You both deserve everything you're getting." I left them standing there, not saying a word, while I packed my bags. I went to my aunt's house next door and stayed with her for months. Mom and Alex eventually got divorced, and he moved out of the neighborhood like the coward that he is. But it doesn't matter because now they can never pretend nothing happened. The aftermath was hard, financially and emotionally, but I came out stronger. I realized that sometimes you have to make tough choices, even when it feels wrong. This whole ordeal taught me a lot about loyalty, trust, and the lengths some people will go for love or convenience. So let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /infidelity. When I first saw her name in his group chat, I felt a sharp jolt. It had been so long since we met. She was the girl who used to sit next to me in high school. We were never friends, but there was that shared memory of being young and naive together. His name was Mike, my husband, and he was cheating with Sarah. For years, our marriage had been strained. We both worked 80-hour weeks at our corporate jobs in different cities, barely seeing each other. One night, after another long day in San Francisco where I was working as a marketing manager, I found myself in a familiar bar, the Corner Dive, in my old hometown of Seattle for a quick drink with my friends. It wasn't until I pulled out my phone to check the time that I noticed his name scrolling down my phone screen. "Mike." I scrolled through their messages. It was just after 6 p.m., and she was messaging him about how much she missed seeing him. They were going on dates, staying up late, talking about shared dreams of a better life. I stared at the screen in disbelief, feeling like the world had shifted beneath my feet. The next day, I walked into our home office, where he worked remotely from Chicago. There was something off. We'd been distant lately, but this felt different. He looked up and gave me that smile that always made me feel warm inside. "Hey, you look amazing," he said, trying to deflect my gaze. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed their conversation in my head over and over again until dawn. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. How could he be so blind? How could he not see what a mistake this was? The very next morning, I sat down to write him a message. It started off casually, with questions about his weekend plans. After a few back-and-forth messages where we talked about small stuff, weather updates, TV shows we both watched, the tension built up like an approaching storm. "Mike," I typed, "can you meet me for coffee this afternoon?" The reply came within seconds. "Sure thing." "Where?" It was at the same corner cafe near his office, where Sarah and he had spent their dates. When I arrived, Mike seemed surprised to see me there. "Hey, what's up?" he asked as we sat down. His eyes flicked to a woman who walked past our table, a figure eerily similar to the one from my high school days. "I've been thinking about us," I began. "It seems like something has changed." He nodded, his expression shifting slightly. "Mike, you know there's always that thing from last year, right?" I said, my voice steady but firm. "The whole summer thing?" His eyes widened in understanding. "Oh, you mean Sarah?" "Yeah, I thought it was over." "No, I don't think so," I continued. "Do you remember how many times you told me that nothing would ever happen with her?" He avoided eye contact, his fingers drumming the table nervously. "It's one thing for us to just forget about it and move on as friends or co-workers, but it's another if you're doing this in secret," I said. "I want to know how long you've been doing this behind my back." The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. Finally, he sighed, looking down at his cup of coffee. Okay, let's be clear about this, Mike, I said, taking a deep breath. It's not just that one thing. There are other women too. How many more times can I take this? His expression changed from guilt to anger. You don't get it, do you? It's not like we're in love or anything. I'm getting tired of pretending. I stood up abruptly. Mike, what have you been doing with her over the past few months? I demanded. He leaned back, crossing his arms. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about, I said through gritted teeth. Every message in that chat is proof. Finally, he relented. Fine, let's end this now. I'll get a divorce, and we can split everything 50-50ths. I couldn't believe it. After all the years of putting up with his selfish behavior, he was acting like this was just another workday negotiation. No, I said firmly. You lied to me for years. You thought you could get away with it because we live in different states and we have jobs that keep us busy. He looked pained, seeing the truth reflected back at him from my eyes. I pulled out a pre-written document, our marriage agreement, which specified that if either of us cheated, it would be a grounds for immediate divorce without asset division. Based on this, I said, sliding it across the table towards him, there's nothing we can negotiate here. Mike's face drained of color as he read through the details. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. Here, he said, shuffling a handful of 20s and 5s into my palm. I looked down at the cash in my hand, feeling a strange mix of disgust and satisfaction. That's not enough, I told him. This isn't just about money. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Mike packed up his belongings without putting up much of a fight, leaving the house early most mornings. Sarah started visiting me at work, bringing lunch to share as if nothing had happened. The divorce papers were filed quickly, and within 6 months, I was single again. The process was anticlimactic. We split our assets evenly but kept all the debts. In the end, it felt more like a clean break than an emotionally charged battle. Mike eventually found someone new and seems to be settling in well with his new life. Sarah? She's still around, too. Now she works as a salesperson at the same company I do, which feels strangely convenient. When you look back, sometimes it's hard to remember why things were so intense between us. But every day, walking into my spacious apartment and feeling the weight of all those years lift off me, I'm reminded. Revenge doesn't always feel good in a way that makes sense, but sometimes it's the only thing left. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /ProRevenge. Here's how it began. My name is Jake, and a few months ago, my life took an absolute U-turn when my girlfriend, Sarah, confessed something that left me feeling more than betrayed. I felt used. She had been seeing Jordan, described as a charming but notorious serial cheater in the local gossip circle. My heart sank like a stone. I was livid, and it wasn't just because she had lied to me. It was the fact that she had chosen someone who had a history of hurting others. I decided I needed evidence, not just her word against his. So, I set up a hidden camera in Sarah's room, hoping to catch some raw reactions from both of them. The setup involved discreetly placing a small video recorder under an electrical outlet cover, ensuring it blended into the environment while recording everything that went on. The next day, when Jordan arrived at Sarah's apartment, they seemed oblivious to my presence. They started off normally, talking about mundane things like movie nights and future plans together. But then, they began to discuss Sarah's past boyfriends in a way I found extremely unsettling. Jordan mentioned a few exes by name, clearly trying to elicit an emotional response from her. Sarah didn't react much at first, but slowly, she became more animated as the conversation progressed. Jordan brought up some of his own past relationships too, throwing around names that I recognized. They were ex-girlfriends he had broken up with after a short time, and not exactly amicably. Sarah's eyes widened slightly as he mentioned one in particular, Katie. That was when Sarah broke, and Jordan didn't see it coming. She started to cry silently, her hands trembling as she wiped away tears. I couldn't watch any longer. The camera captured a moment that felt like a punch in the gut for me. Sarah tried to compose herself, but Jordan seemed undeterred, asking if there was ever anything between them. That's when something miraculous happened. The camera caught Jordan laughing at her misery, completely unapologetic about how his actions affected her. It was in that moment I realized the full extent of what he had done, using Sarah as a rebound and then laughing it off like nothing. When the video finally ended, I watched its contents over and over again, feeling betrayed but also validated. There wasn't any need for me to confront him directly. His reactions on camera were enough to confirm everything that had gone wrong between us. In the weeks following, Sarah's world unraveled. Her parents confronted her about what she had been doing, leading to a painful breakup with Jordan. She was still reeling from it all when they called off their engagement just 2 days before our wedding date. I watched from afar, feeling an odd mix of relief and guilt for not having told anyone sooner. The video spread like wildfire through r/pro-revenge, becoming one of the most shared posts on the subreddit. People commiserated with Sarah and praised me for having evidence to back her up against Jordan's lies. It was cathartic in a way, knowing that justice, or something close to it, had been served. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to r/true off my chest. I had always been a skeptic of revenge stories, thinking they were just hollow fantasies of someone trying to make themselves feel better about their situation. But when my ex-husband left me and took everything with him, I realized that sometimes the line between reality and fantasy can be blurred. It started innocently enough, just a few months into our marriage, but I could tell something wasn't right. He seemed distant, distracted, and often had excuses for his lack of attention. When he eventually called it quits on me to pursue a younger woman, I was devastated. We had been together since college. He had kids from another relationship. The betrayal cut deep. But instead of wallowing in self-pity, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I needed closure, and not just from him, but also from myself. So one evening, as I sat in our living room surrounded by boxes packed up from his belongings, I had an idea that felt liberating. I went online, created a new profile with a name that sounded vaguely familiar, Sarah Miller. My ex-husband's new girlfriend seemed like someone I could emulate, sweet and understanding, but also, as he always claimed to prefer, adventurous. After all, how hard could it be? A simple fake email address, a few quick photos from my own photo album, and voila, I was back in the game. The first several interactions were awkward at best. He was suspicious, asking for too many details about Sarah's background and interests. But slowly, our conversations evolved into something more intimate. Weekend plans, shared interests, and eventually even virtual dates using my webcam. His enthusiasm was genuine enough that I began to believe it might actually work. But the moment of truth came when he proposed a real date. He said we could meet up at a local restaurant, and if things went well, perhaps try something bolder, like a getaway weekend in the mountains. The thrill of playing the part intensified as I navigated his expectations with a mix of charm and curiosity. On the day of our meeting, I meticulously prepared Sarah's favorite perfume, a new outfit, and even a fake engagement ring to make everything feel real. We met outside the restaurant, both looking nervous but excited. As we walked in, he seemed oblivious to my presence until I handed him a drink, and then his eyes widened as recognition washed over his face. "Sophia?" he stammered, clearly shaken. "Sarah," I corrected with a smile. "And I think you're the lucky one today." That single moment was electric. He stuttered out an apology and tried to explain, but I cut him off with a sharp tone. "No need for excuses now, Jim. We've got more important things to discuss." And so, we sat down at our table, where I let my pent-up frustration pour out. "You left me high and dry, Jim. You didn't even bother trying to make amends after everything I did for you," I said, taking a sip of my wine. His expression shifted from guilt to fear. "Sophia, what do you want?" I leaned forward, my voice low but firm. "You want proof? Fine, here it is." I pulled out a photo on my phone that showed his old apartment, empty and clean. "This was your home. Now it's mine. Please, just talk to me," he implored. "Nope," I said with finality. "I'm done playing your games. You cheated on me, took everything, left our kids without a father. It's over between us now." With that, I threw down the gauntlet. "If you ever try this again, I swear to God, Jim, my next move won't be so tame." He nodded, seemingly beaten but still holding on a hope. "All right, Sophia, I'll stay away." I stood up and gathered our things, giving him one last glare before exiting the restaurant. As I walked down the street, a sense of vindication washed over me. For months, he had played the victim in his own story. Now it was my turn to rewrite the narrative. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. Quick reminder to smash that subscribe button if you want more stories like this every week. Okay, trust me, it's about to get so much worse for them. This was posted to r/surviving infidelity. I never thought my world would be turned upside down like it did when my cheater husband decided to take up with someone else. His name is Jack, and he's a real player. Fancy car, fancy house, always dressed to impress. But little did we know, his new friend had a secret identity that was about to come out. We lived in Maplewood, a quiet town where everyone knew each other's names. Jack moved here just as our kids were getting old enough for high school, and I thought he fit right into the social scene. Always hosting parties, always mingling with the parents at school events. We had both been through some tough times, my marriage, his, but we seemed to have found a balance. At least that was the story. One day, while out running errands, I saw Jack's car pull up next to mine at the grocery store. A woman got out, and she didn't look familiar. She had long brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing sunglasses even though it wasn't sunny outside. I watched as they chatted for a moment before Jack got into his car and drove away. As if sensing my eyes on her, the woman glanced over and saw me staring, then quickly ducked down and pretended to check something on her phone. I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. Over the next few days, I kept seeing glimpses of this mysterious lady around town, shopping at local stores, going out for dinner. She always managed to avoid eye contact with me, but I knew she was there. My gut told me that it wasn't just a casual friendship. Something more was going on here. One evening, Jack invited the woman over for dinner without telling me. When he finally came home, I could see the tension in his eyes. He was nervous, which didn't sit well with me after what I had seen. "Who's she?" I asked bluntly. Jack looked taken aback, but quickly composed himself. "No one," he said dismissively. That's when it clicked for me. The woman who had been around town, her name was Claire. She wasn't some casual acquaintance, and Jack knew it too. He must have felt like he was being watched because every time I turned to him with a question or concern, he would flinch. Determined not to let my husband play games with me anymore, I decided to find out the truth. I started by digging through social media profiles, trying to piece together bits of information. Claire was active online. She had a profile on a local dating app and even hosted private meetups for other users, none of whom were her true friends. I couldn't just go around accusing Jack outright, so I decided to create an account myself under the name Lila. I joined a few groups where people discussed local events and social happenings. Claire was there, active as ever. Lila sent her a message, inviting her out for coffee one afternoon. When Claire agreed, I was ready. We met at a quaint cafe near the park. Claire was on time, wearing sunglasses even indoors. She seemed nervous but polite. "So, what brings you to Maplewood?" I asked casually, sipping my coffee. Claire hesitated before replying. "I just wanted to explore some new things. Meet new people. And did you find anything interesting so far?" I pressed gently. She sighed deeply and leaned in closer, as if sharing a secret. "Actually, there's more to this town than meets the eye," she said softly. That was all I needed. I made up an excuse about needing to go home earlier that night and left her alone at the table. When I got back to my house, I checked my messages. Claire had sent me a text with a photo of a local restaurant called the Cozy Corner. With that little piece of information, I knew exactly what to do next. I visited the Cozy Corner the following evening, posing as a customer. They had been busy all night. I was just about to leave when a waitress approached me. "Would you like to try our secret menu item?" she asked with a grin, handing me an envelope with a coupon inside. On closer inspection, I noticed something strange. It was a discount for a private dinner party at the Cozy Corner. Underneath the name host was written in elegant handwriting, Claire. Armed with this evidence, I went back to Jack and confronted him directly. "I know about you and her," I said calmly but firmly. "She's Claire from that dating app." Jack's face turned red, and he started stammering. "And nothing is going on," he stammered. But it was too late. He had already messed with someone else's life, so now it was his turn to have his world turned upside down. The next day, Jack pulled me aside in our living room and handed over a small envelope. Inside were 2 tickets to an upcoming gala event hosted by the local community center. The night of the gala, Jack seemed unusually nervous. He paced back and forth while I prepared for the evening ahead. At the gala, Jack made his way through the crowd until he reached Claire's side. As they began their conversation, I slipped away unnoticed. At a quiet corner, I pulled out my phone and started filming. The event was filled with other couples like us, parents, friends, neighbors, and the camera captured everyone's joyous faces until it landed on Jack. The video showed Jack making small talk with Claire, but looking increasingly uncomfortable as the evening went on. He glanced at his watch several times and finally excused himself to go home early, leaving behind a visibly upset Claire who was left alone amidst all those eyes watching her. Back at our house, I uploaded the video onto YouTube anonymously, tagging Jack's social media pages. Within minutes, it gained thousands of views. Comments poured in, people gasping with shock and outrage. Jack's reputation crumbled that night. He lost his job, his friends distanced themselves from him. I couldn't help but feel a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. He was just a man who had made a mistake, but now the tables were turned. In the aftermath, I felt a strange sense of relief. Maybe it was time for me to start anew too. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /bridge club. A simple game of bridge could lead to discovering something far more complex and painful: betrayal. It all started when Jane, a friend from the local card club, invited me to play bridge with her and her husband, Tom. I accepted without much thought, not realizing that my life was about to get turned upside down. We played at their home, surrounded by elegant furnishings and an air of hospitality. The setting couldn't have been more perfect for a night of friendly competition. As we settled in, Jane introduced us to her husband, Tom, with a warm smile, and began explaining the rules to me. Little did I know that this evening was going to reveal secrets I never wanted to uncover. The cards were shuffled, and the bidding began. We played several rounds before the tension started to rise. Tom seemed unusually quiet, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for something or someone. During a break in the game, Jane leaned over and whispered that she was actually married to Bill, not Tom. The revelation felt like a punch in the gut. I looked at Tom, confused and then aghast. Our entire evening had been based on false pretenses. "Wait, what are you talking about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Jane took a deep breath, adjusting her glasses as she continued. "I've been telling you that I'm married to Tom, but he's not really my husband. We're just friends. I've been seeing Bill for almost 2 years now." The room spun around me. The cards felt heavy in my hands. It was hard to process what was happening, but as a trained listener, or so I thought, I managed to keep my composure. "Is that why you seemed so uneasy tonight?" I asked, still trying to understand. Jane nodded, her face pale and eyes filled with regret. "Yes, I was nervous about being caught." That night at the bridge club turned into a long, uncomfortable conversation where we revealed more of each other's lives. Tom had been completely oblivious. He thought his wife was faithful. Jane felt guilty but couldn't bring herself to leave her lover, Bill. We decided to cut our losses and agreed to continue playing as if nothing were amiss for the night, Tom's sake. We managed to finish the game, but my mind was consumed by thoughts of betrayal and manipulation. The next day, I called Jane on the phone, trying to process everything that had happened. "Are you sure about this? You know what it means, right?" I asked, my voice more serious now. "Absolutely," she said with a tone of desperation. "I've been living in fear and regret for years. Please, just keep our secret." That night, I couldn't sleep. The betrayal weighed on me heavily. My friendship with Jane had changed. She was no longer the same person who sat across from me at the bridge table. It was then that I decided to take action. I began researching how to bring down Bill and his so-called fiancé. After gathering evidence, I posted an anonymous message on our /infidelity. Someone reached out with this story. They discovered their close friend had been secretly seeing another man for years. The relationship was fake, just a way for the husband to stay faithful. The betrayed wife finally found the courage to come forward and shared everything. If you recognize anyone involved or have similar stories, we'd love to hear them. The post received over 10,000 upvotes in under an hour, with many people sharing their own experiences of betrayal and hidden infidelity. The response was overwhelmingly supportive, but it also led me to face the consequences of my actions. Months passed, and I started receiving threatening messages from Bill's supporters who wanted to retaliate against me for exposing him. They left my inbox filled with aggressive messages and even a few physical threats. But I stood firm in my decision, knowing that justice sometimes means standing up to bullies. In the end, the truth came out loud and clear. Bill was fired from his job as an executive at a major tech company. He lost not only his professional status, but also his personal reputation. Jane finally left him and began rebuilding her life with honesty and integrity. Looking back on that fateful night of bridge, I can't help but feel a mix of satisfaction and regret. While my actions brought about justice for someone who was betrayed, they also brought turmoil into the lives of others. But sometimes, it's necessary to expose truths, no matter how painful. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /pro revenge. I thought I had it all figured out. Everything was going perfectly according to plan until he showed me just how desperate and willing to go to any length to get what he wanted. Let's set the scene. My girlfriend, Sarah. She's a successful marketing executive at Blue Peak Solutions, making over $130,000 a year. And then there's John, her ex, who was never quite out of the picture. When I first started dating Sarah, it was clear she still harbored feelings for him. But hey, you can't blame two people with history, right? We were happy enough together until he popped the question in front of our mutual friends. I knew something was off. The way John looked at her during that proposal just screamed backdoor. And his ex-wife had a reputation for playing fast and loose with men's hearts. She's been in rehab more times than I can count and is now trying to make it as a freelance makeup artist. Perfect candidate, right? Sarah didn't exactly seem excited about this engagement, but she kept saying he's finally found the one. I was patient at first, waiting for the signs. But then there were moments when John would leave town on a whim with some vague excuse of urgent business. One night, I overheard him talking to Sarah late into the night. They were discussing something about her ex, using his name, but in a way that sent chills down my spine. I decided to do some digging. Turns out he had been sending Sarah messages under a pseudonym for months, trying to reconnect with his ex-wife. She was back in town, and they were apparently still involved. I couldn't believe it. I mean, we hadn't even really talked about marriage yet. So here's how I hit payback. I went on the internet and found their wedding photos from 3 years ago. Sarah was there, standing next to her ex, now my ex, holding a champagne glass with a happy couple grin plastered across her face. I snapped a screenshot and sent it straight to John. The message was simple. You wanted them to see your engagement ring? How about you show them what she wore on the night of their wedding? I couldn't believe his response. You can't just show this around. Everyone's going to think we're doing something behind everyone's backs. I replied, deadpan. Well, maybe that was part of the plan all along. Then I added a link to an article about secret marriages and infidelity to rub salt in the wound. In retaliation, John started making excuses for Sarah, saying she had been dealing with an anxiety attack. Then he went and proposed again at our favorite restaurant, right on my birthday. He said it was his way of making amends after being caught out. I laughed because, honestly, there wasn't anything I could do about the whole marriage thing. The day before our big plan, Sarah got called into a meeting with John's boss from work, Mr. Hargrove at Blue Peak Solutions. She came back looking tense and stressed. I just shrugged it off until later that night, when she messaged me saying Mr. Hargrove had pulled her aside after the meeting and asked about our engagement timeline. I knew what was coming next, but still, it hit hard. He told her point blank, John has a very strict deadline for his divorce. He wants to be married by your birthday. You need to keep this low-key. Sarah looked panicked. What can I do? We've been planning everything. I didn't even have time to reply before she sent over the screenshot of the meeting notes and texted me her ex's name. Just like that, my plan was out in the open. John knew, and everyone at work found out about Sarah's ex too. It was all over the company chat rooms and gossip forums. The aftermath? Well, I confronted him again, telling him it was over. He couldn't handle the truth anymore, and he broke down crying. We both agreed to call it quits amicably, but you can bet there will be some awkward moments with Sarah's coworkers for a while. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. This was posted to our /surviving infidelity. I don't know why they created that profile. Maybe they thought I'd never see through their BS. But after months of emotional torture, I found out every single lie my partner told me in the name of a fake affair. I remember when she started talking about her colleague online who kept sending her messages and videos. I was jealous right off the bat, but she would laugh it off and say they were just friends. For months, I watched her on that app, swiping left, sending emojis. All this while she knew how much she meant to me in real life. One night, fed up with her lies, I decided to play my own game of revenge. I went back to the site where we'd met and used a fake profile. It wasn't hard. The internet is full of ready-made templates. I pretended to be a colleague who was interested in her work but couldn't take his eyes off her at all times. A few days later, I got my first message. "You're beautiful," she wrote. "What's your real name?" I had to laugh. Of course they knew it wasn't me. But now we were playing a cat and mouse game, with no one knowing who was really on the other end of these exchanges. As days turned into weeks, our online relationship got deeper. She told me about her struggles at work, about how she felt suffocated by our real marriage. I fed those little details back to her, always careful not to give away that it was a ruse. I wanted this to feel real for her. Then came the clincher. I scheduled dates, where we both knew no one else would be around. At first she tried to stonewall them, but then gave in out of curiosity. We met up at a coffee shop across town. I sat across from her, sipping my drink as she nervously fiddled with hers. I looked directly into her eyes and said, "What are you really doing on that app, Sarah?" She froze for just a second before breaking down crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I joined because I thought I was falling in love with someone else." The guilt and relief washed over me. This whole time the lines between us were fuzzy, but I could see now exactly what I had been missing out on. After that, we talked for hours. I listened to her story, helped her through it. In the end, she confessed everything. Who set her up in the first place, how long she'd been doing this. My heart shattered into a million pieces, but at least now there was no more denying what had really happened between us. As we parted ways that night, I said one thing to her. "I'm not forgiving you," I told her honestly. "But maybe, just maybe, if you can keep me in the loop next time, we could work this out." She nodded, and for once seemed truly contrite. Now when I see someone else looking at my profile, or swiping left, I can't help but smile. The only regret is that it took so long to figure it all out. If you're reading this and ever suspect something's off, go ahead and play your own little game. Sometimes the truth will reveal itself. Let me know in the comments if you would have done the same. And that is going to do it for today's episode of Reddit Untold. If you made it all the way to the end, you are exactly the kind of person this channel is for. So do me a favor and hit subscribe so you do not miss the next batch. Drop a comment and tell me which story was your favorite, and whether you would have had the nerve to do the same. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.